This story was sent to us by one of our viewers. It's a story about secrets, grief, and how one letter, hidden for years, changed everything after a loved one passed away. Grab a coffee, sit back, and get ready for an emotional journey. I found the letter the night after my father's funeral, and I wish I never had. The house felt dead. That's the only way I can describe it. 3 days had passed since we buried Dad. The funeral flowers were wilting on the kitchen counter, their sweet smell mixed with something stale, something final. I was alone now. My siblings had already rushed back to their important lives, back to their corner offices and perfect families, back to forgetting I existed. The silence was crushing. No more of Dad's coughing fits echoing from upstairs. No more game shows blaring from his old television. Just emptiness. I walked through rooms that felt like a museum. Everything exactly as he left it. His reading glasses on the side table. His coffee mug still in the sink. Even his slippers by the door, waiting for feet that would never fill them again. That's when I noticed it. The loose floorboard in his bedroom. I'd stepped on it 100 times growing up. It always creaked, always shifted slightly under my weight. But tonight, something was different. There was a gap, a small space where the wood had pulled away from the nail. My hands shook as I pried it loose. Underneath, wrapped in an old pillowcase, was a metal box. The kind people use for important documents. The key was taped to the bottom. Inside, yellowed envelopes, bank statements, and one letter with my name written in Dad's handwriting. The paper felt fragile, like it might crumble if I held it too tight. I almost didn't open it. Some secrets are meant to stay buried, but grief makes you desperate. Desperate for one more conversation, one more moment, one more chance to understand the man who raised you. I unfolded the letter. The first line made my blood turn cold. Sarah, if you're reading this, then I'm gone. And there are things you need to know about your brother Michael. Things that will change everything. Growing up, I was invisible. Michael was the star. 3 years older, charming, athletic, smart. Everything I wasn't. He got full rides to college while I worked double shifts to pay for community classes. He married his high school sweetheart in a ceremony that cost more than I made in 2 years. He bought houses while I rented tiny apartments. And Dad worshipped him. Every conversation was about Michael's promotions, Michael's achievements, Michael's perfect children who called every Sunday. I remember being 12, showing Dad a painting I'd worked on for weeks. He barely glanced up from his newspaper. That's nice, sweetheart. Did I tell you Michael made varsity? I stopped trying after that. When I graduated nursing school, Dad missed the ceremony. Michael had a work dinner that same night. Dad chose to drive 4 hours to attend that instead. When I got divorced, Dad's response was, well, maybe you should have tried harder. When Michael got divorced 2 years later, it was, that woman never deserved you anyway. I learned to expect nothing, to want nothing, to be grateful for scraps of attention. But I still showed up. Every holiday, every birthday, every time Dad needed someone to drive him to doctor appointments or pick up prescriptions. Michael sent cards. I held his hand through chemo. Michael called once a month. I called every day. Michael had excuses. I had presents. Yet at the funeral, I watched everyone gather around Michael, offering condolences, sharing memories, talking about Dad like he was some kind of saint. Nobody mentioned the daughter who'd spent every weekend for the last 5 years making sure he wasn't alone, who'd moved back home when he got sick, who'd put her own life on hold to take care of him. I was a ghost at my own father's funeral, standing in the back while my brother received sympathy like a king holding court. The call came at 3:17 a.m. on a Tuesday. I'd been expecting it. Dad's breathing had gotten worse. The hospice nurse had warned me, but you're never really ready. Sarah? His voice was so weak I could barely hear him. Can you come? I drove through empty streets in my pajamas. The hospital parking lot was nearly deserted. My footsteps echoed in the hallway. His room smelled like disinfectant and impending death. I'm here, Dad. I took his hand. It felt like paper, cold and fragile. His eyes fluttered open. For a moment, they were clear. More clear than they'd been in months. Sarah, there's something. His voice cracked. In my room. But then the monitors started beeping. Nurses rushed in. I was pushed aside as they worked. He died holding the hand of a stranger in scrubs, while I stood in the corner, crying alone. The funeral was everything I expected. Michael played the grieving son perfectly. He gave a beautiful eulogy about Dad's wisdom and strength. about family values and unconditional love. I wanted to scream, to stand up and tell everyone about the nights I'd spent in that hospital room, about the years I'd sacrificed, about the daughter who'd actually been there, but I stayed quiet, like always. The gathering afterward was worse. People I'd never seen before sharing stories about my father's generosity, his kindness, his devotion to family. He talked about Michael constantly, someone said. So proud of that boy. I served coffee. I cleaned plates. I nodded politely while people ignored me. Michael held court in the living room, accepting condolences with dignity. His wife clung to his arm, dabbing her eyes with tissues. Nobody asked how I was doing. Nobody acknowledged that I might be grieving too. I was invisible, even in my own grief. The letter was 3 pages long, written in Dad's careful handwriting, dated 6 months before he died. Sarah, if you're reading this, then I'm gone. And there are things you need to know about your brother Michael. Things that will change everything. I've been a coward. For 30 years, I've been a coward. Michael isn't my son. My hands started shaking. The words blurred together. Your mother had an affair. You were 2 years old. Michael was the result. She begged me to raise him as my own. Said she'd made a mistake. Said she loved me. I agreed. But I couldn't look at him without seeing her betrayal, without seeing another man's child. So I overcompensated. I gave him everything, praised him for breathing, tried to convince myself and everyone else that I loved him equally. But you, Sarah, you were mine, really mine, and somehow that made it harder to love you openly. Because loving you meant admitting I couldn't love him. I pushed you away to protect myself from the truth, that I had one real child and one reminder of my wife's infidelity. The letter fell from my hands. I had to pick it up to keep reading. The house is yours. I changed the will last month. Michael doesn't know. Your mother never told him the truth about his father. I know this is cruel. I know this is too late. But I need you to know that every sacrifice you made, every time you put your life on hold for me, I saw it. I felt it. You were the daughter who stayed. The daughter who loved me despite getting nothing in return. The bank account information is in the box. There's enough to start over, to build the life you gave up to take care of me. I'm sorry I couldn't say this while I was alive. I'm sorry I was too proud, too hurt, too stubborn to be the father you deserved. You were always my real child, Sarah, the only one who truly was. Love, Dad P.S. Michael's biological father lives in Portland. His name is David Chen. If you decide to tell Michael the truth, you'll find his contact information in the envelope. I read the letter 4 times. Each time the words hit differently. Anger, relief, confusion, vindication. Everything I'd felt growing up suddenly made sense. The distance, the favoritism, the way Dad seemed to struggle with loving Michael despite showering him with attention. He'd been performing, putting on a show to convince himself he was a good man, and I'd paid the price. I didn't sleep that night, or the next. By Thursday, I'd made my decision. Michael was at work, probably telling colleagues about his tragic loss, playing the part of the devoted son one more time. I called his office. Sarah? He sounded surprised. We rarely spoke unless it was about Dad. Is everything okay? We need to talk. Tonight. Dad's house. Is this about cleaning out his things? Because I've been meaning to. Just be here at 7. He arrived with his wife Rebecca, both of them wearing that patient expression people use when they're about to deal with someone they consider unstable. Sarah, you look terrible, Rebecca said, like she was doing me a favor by noticing. Have you been sleeping? I handed Michael the letter without saying a word. I watched his face change as he read. The color drained from his cheeks. His hands started shaking just like mine had. This can't be real. His voice was barely a whisper. There's more. I gave him the envelope with David Chen's information. Dad kept everything. Birth records, hospital bills, even photos of Mom with your real father. Rebecca grabbed the letter from his hands. Her eyes went wide as she read. This is insane, she said. Your father was clearly losing his mind at the end. You can't seriously believe. The DNA test results are in there too. I'd found them that morning, tucked behind the bank statements. Dad had it done years ago, just to be sure. Michael sank into Dad's old recliner, the chair where he'd spent his final months, staring out the window. Why? His voice cracked. Why would he tell you this now? Because he felt guilty. Because he realized he'd spent 30 years punishing both of us for Mom's mistakes. Rebecca was pacing now. This changes nothing. Michael is still part of this family. Still entitled to... Actually, it changes everything. I pulled out the will. The house is mine. The accounts are mine. Dad left you a small inheritance, Michael, but everything else goes to his biological daughter. The silence that followed was deafening. Michael looked up at me with eyes I'd never seen before. Not the confident golden child I'd grown up with, but a broken man discovering his entire life had been built on a lie. I need to find him, he whispered. I need to find my real father. 2 weeks later, Michael flew to Portland. He met David Chen at a small cafe downtown, the man who'd given him life but never knew he existed. They looked exactly alike. 6 months have passed since that night. Michael and I don't talk much, but when we do, it's different. Real. He's not performing anymore, and I'm not invisible. He's been seeing a therapist, trying to understand who he is when he's not the perfect son. Rebecca left him last month. Apparently she'd married the golden child, not the man struggling with his identity. I sold Dad's house, used the money to open a small clinic in the neighborhood where I grew up, a place where people without insurance can get care, where being invisible doesn't mean being uncared for. Sometimes I wonder if I should hate Dad for what he did, for the years of feeling worthless, for learning to expect nothing and be grateful for scraps. But hate takes energy I don't have anymore. Instead, I choose to see his letter as a gift, not the money or the house, but the truth, the explanation I'd needed my whole life. I wasn't unlovable. I wasn't disappointing. I wasn't invisible because I wasn't worth seeing. I was invisible because loving me openly would have forced him to confront a truth he wasn't ready to face. That doesn't excuse 30 years of emotional neglect, but it explains it. And sometimes, understanding is enough to start healing. Last week, Michael brought his daughter to the clinic. She'd scraped her knee at the playground. Nothing serious, but she was scared. I cleaned the wound and put on a cartoon bandage. She hugged my leg and said, "Thank you, Aunt Sarah." Michael's eyes filled with tears. "Dad never brought me to see you," he said quietly. "I wish he had." "Well," I said, lifting his daughter onto the exam table so she could reach the sticker jar. "You're here now." He nodded. "I'm here now. It's not forgiveness. Not yet. But it's a start. Some secrets destroy families. Others, if revealed at the right time, can finally set everyone free. I think Dad knew that when he wrote the letter. I think he knew that sometimes the truth comes too late to save the people who need it most, but just in time to save the ones who are left behind. Some stories arrive too late. Others, just in time to heal a broken soul. If this story moved you in any way, consider subscribing to our channel. We share real, emotional stories every week, and yours might be the next one.